Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Black Rock Castle Observatory YouTube channel. If this is your first time joining us on the channel, don't forget to subscribe and to hit the notification bell if you haven't done so already. This way, you'll be notified when we upload videos and do live streams like this one, so you're not missing out. Today, we are here to celebrate my favorite week of the year, Space Week. My name is Danielle, and I'm coming to you live from Black Rock Castle Observatory in Cork, Ireland. And I'm thrilled to introduce to you NASA astronaut and good friend of BCO, Dan Tani. How are you doing, Dan?
Danielle, I'm doing great, thank you, and happy Space Week, one of my favorite weeks of the year too.
It's like, it has to be kind of obligatory for an astronaut. Like, it has to be your favorite week of the year, right?
Yeah, it's in the contract.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to be talking a little bit about what's been going on in the world. The whole world went through a massive change in the last 2 years, and many people saw themselves experiencing in some form or another a life in isolation. And so you're no stranger to this as part of your training and your experiences as an astronaut. So one of the first times I ever met you, we talked a bit about the Nemo mission that you were a part of, and that was done all under the sea. So I think a lot of people think about astronauts going to space, but they don't even realize that training happens here on Earth under the water. So that must have been isolating in and of itself. Like, what was that experience like?
Well, exactly right. When going to space is really expensive and it's really relatively rare. And so we want to train astronauts and people that are going to go to space to prepare for all the things that all aspects of going to space. Part of it is being in a very isolated place, being someplace where you can't go home very quickly, where help is not readily available in most cases. And so we at NASA have tried to figure out what kind of training events can we utilize that are sort of like space. We call them analogs. And one of the things that we found was an underwater laboratory off the coast of Florida here in the United States, in about 60 feet of water on the ocean floor, and we call it NEMO, NASA and Extreme Environment Mission Operations. And it's an existing laboratory, and we get to use it for weeks at a time. And so I'll say 4 NASA people and then 2 people that are that work with the habitat go down, and you dive down to 60 feet and you go into the habitat, and because of the pressure down on 60 feet of seawater and on top of you, once you're down there, you cannot quickly come up to the surface because the change in pressure would be really bad for your body. So now you're stuck basically at the bottom of the ocean. But we do full missions. I did an 8-day mission. We've gone as long as a couple of weeks. And you can talk to mission control, and you can do experiments. And we go out and do scuba diving kind of stuff, sort of like you're on the moon. We're trying to get the experience of what it's like to be very isolated, small team. Sometimes problems crop up and you have to resolve your problems between people or with equipment or something. And it does a great job of sort of simulating a space flight with it's not as expensive as going to space. So that was one of the things we did. We were very isolated. It was just the 6 of us in a little habitat. It's cramped in there. It's not very comfortable in there because it's kind of humid. And so you get a little grouchy, and that's really good. It's really good to learn how to be grouchy and uncomfortable and not quite, it's not all the comforts of home, but you learn how to work as a team, and you learn how to shift your brain and say, you know what, this is what I do. And I know I can't see my loved ones. I can talk to them on the phone, but it's a little bit different, but it's great preparation for space flight.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, being stuck in a small team and having to deal with being grouchy, and then you're also doing work down there as well. So you're not
right.
hanging out underneath the water. So
right.
I think other people probably can relate to that now after going through the pandemic issues and having working from home scenarios, and then having pretty much a small team. People are probably stuck at home with families and things like that.
That's right. Yeah. And all those little things that that might bother you but you're gonna, you only see them a couple hours a day. Well, now you see them 24 hours a day, and so you just have to learn how to deal with it and find your own corner to work in, or get in your own headspace. And so again, you're right. The Nemo experience, or the training events, have been really valuable for learning how to go, preparing to go into space and live on the space station for months at a time.
Was the mission when you were for Nemo, were you in a smaller space than what you were in the International Space Station? Or
yeah, the Nemo laboratory, it's called the Aquarius habitat, is much smaller than the space station. It's really only one sort of tube, I'll call it a tube, divided into two parts. One's a living area, and then one is a living experiment area. And so, yes, it's much smaller. You're always going to see your crewmate. Now, the space station's much bigger. And I was up there with two other people, three of us, for 4 months for me. And it was so large with so many modules that if you wanted to, you could go all day and not see anybody else. So if you needed the alone time, or the quiet time, or the time where you just don't, want to be by yourself, you can certainly do that. Or you can go, we had meals together, so you do see people, you do see your crewmates every day. And so it's a different experience. The space station, much nicer, frankly, than the underwater habitat, but an amazing place. The habitat was an amazing place to be. Big rays and turtles swimming by, and we had a big grouper, a big 6-foot grouper that hung out near the habitat. It was really cool.
Oh yeah, because it's off the coast of Florida, so you have little big grouper. I used to live over. I remember people going out fishing for them. They're huge.
Right. Yeah, they're right. It was pretty cool, pretty exciting to look out your window and see your neighbors. Because we're the visitors, right? And see the cool wildlife.
So it has to take a lot of coping skills for when you're stuck in a situation like that. During the pandemic, at least some people might have been able to just escape and go for a walk if they needed to get away from their situation at home. But you don't have that chance. You can't just I'm just going to take a walk through the ocean, right?
No, that's exactly right. And the same thing with space. And so Nemo is one of the things that we do. We do other type of harsh environment training, but we also travel a lot. We also go to all around the world to go to training events, and we spend a lot of time away from home. And so a lot of time in the airplane, a lot of time in a hotel room or something, and it's the same sort of coping skills. And so what you have to learn to do is sort of be okay with nothing around you, and nobody interacting with you, or you have to really be okay to be, I would say, bored, because there are times when just nothing's happening, or we jet lagged a lot, and so you're wide awake at 4 a.m, and you just you've watched everything you can watch on Netflix, and so you just have to learn how to be good about just being on your own, spending time getting something done, or even not getting something done. Just figuring out how you cannot drive yourself crazy by the lack of stimulation, the lack of interaction. And so travel, the amount of travel we used to do as crews in training really actually helped that. You learned how to get into a book, or get into a podcast, or just take a nap, learn how to take naps, and learn how to be okay without something concrete to do.
Yeah. Actually, we had a question that was submitted earlier related to this, and wanted to know if let's see where it was in here. I know there was something that they were asking, that does NASA actually prepare you for that sort of training, or is it something that you learn while you are? Oh no, I can't find the question here, but
I get the gist.
Yeah, it was do you get preparation, or do you learn it through the training?
I would say it's partially both. Well, partially we select astronauts. So NASA, I'm going to speak for NASA, ESA is the same way, but we have the luxury of picking exactly who we want to be astronauts, because we have so many people that want to be astronauts. And so some of the criteria that we look at when we select astronauts is who we don't explicitly test like the ability to be isolated, but you can talk to people and you can look at their background and you can hang out with them and you can sense these are people that don't need a lot of care or a lot of hand holding. They are okay on their own. They are self-motivated. And so for the astronaut corps, we have the luxury of being able to select those types of people or people we think that are good at that anyway, especially nowadays when we're going to the station for 6 months at a time and we're picking astronauts that are going to go to the moon or to Mars, and the Mars mission is going to be years long. So, A, we select out of a pool. We that's one of the things we look for. And then B, yes, we do get some explicit training on not how to deal with isolation, but self-care, self-help, making sure that when you work as a team, an effective team, you learn that one of the most important thing to do is take care of yourself so that you're not a burden on the rest of the team. When we're on a big hike and you have wet socks, that doesn't just affect you and your misery, but when you're moaning and groaning about your wet socks, it just brings the whole team down, and you have to be aware of that. So we get training for that, to be a good team member, be an effective team member, take care of yourself. And that's all rolled up in this. How do you make sure that that you can be on your own or in a small team for a long time and be the most effective? So yes, we do get some of that training.
It's really interesting because I think that's a topic that's really come up over the last 2 years that I don't remember it being such a big thing that was talked about until now. I think that's something that's been brought out recently. So it's interesting that that's a skill set that will be able to help people and especially we're talking about, you were mentioning going to Mars and having that long duration space flight or long duration missions. This is going to be much longer than what we've done previously.
Yeah, going to Mars is going to be a whole different can of worms. It's long, it's years long. It takes right now 6 to 10 months to get there. And then you've got to wait for the planets to all line up for your return home. That's a couple of years. So that's a long time. And then when we're at Mars, right now, when we go to the International Space Station, we're only 400 kilometers away from the Earth. And so when we pick up the microphone and talk to ground or talk to our family, pretty much a regular phone call, a little bit of a delay because it's got to go through the satellites. Go to Mars, when we go to the moon, there's a couple second delay. Okay, so you'll talk, you'll have to wait, you get the response. When we go to Mars, there's going to be somewhere between an 8 and a 15-minute delay between you saying something and the Earth hearing it. And you just can't avoid that. That's the speed of light from getting from Mars to the Earth. And so those people are going to have to learn how to communicate in a completely different way. They're going to have to, right? So it's not conversation anymore. You're going to front load all of your questions, all of your answers, send them to your family or your loved ones or whoever, and then wait a half an hour or so to get it all back. So that's going to be quite a challenge when we go to Mars. I really admire the people that are wanting to get on a spacecraft and go to Mars.
It's some real mental endurance too. On top of physical, it's very mental. And have you ever used voice notes before, like on any of your texting apps or anything like that?
Yeah, once in a while. Yeah, I can hit the microphone and talk instead of type. Yes, it's similar. I guess it's similar.
That's what it made me think of, because until the pandemic, I had never really used them before, and now I use them all the time. And it's a different way to communicate. It really isn't a conversation. It's more of like, I'm going to say everything I need to say, send it off to you, and then it's coming back to me. So kind of in that way. Yeah,
I agree. We're going to have to learn a whole new skill set. And maybe we're already learning it because of the current Earthbound technology. Yeah.
A lot of preparation happening. Everyone's going to be astronauts.
Yeah, right.
So one of the things that I was looking at on the Nemo mission versus, so you did the shuttle missions up to the International Space Station.
Right.
And so when you were in Nemo, you were dealing with a lot of atmosphere. It's 2.5 atmosphere underneath the water there, right?
Yeah, it's 60 to 3 atmospheres full of water, right? 33, two atmospheres full of water. 33 feet of water is an atmosphere. So yeah, 60 feet, 2 atmospheres.
So then inside of the what do you call it, the chamber or the vessel?
Yeah, the habitat.
The habitat. Then are you feeling pressure as well inside? I'm sure it's probably pressurized, but is there an effect inside of there being?
So right. So inside the habitat, we are at the same pressure as the water down there. So it's actually it's 3 atmospheres, right? Because you have the 1 atmosphere at the surface and then 2 additional atmospheres. So you're at 3 atmospheres. Do you feel a difference? Not really, not explicitly. You don't feel it in your ears because everything has equalized by the time you're down there. But weird things happen. There's a lot of the air. Of course, the air is compressed and it's denser. Okay, and so electronics get hotter because it's not because the air isn't circulating enough or pulling the heat away. So you have to think about, like space, you have to think about this is a little different, and it affects us in ways that aren't always obvious. And so, like space, without the gravitational forces pulling in a particular direction, since we're falling around the planet, we look weightless, which is great. But there's a lot of things to think about. Air bubbles get into gas bubbles get into liquid. And so when you just take a big drink, you're drinking a lot of air. You have to think about that. And you have to think about dust is not falling to the ground, right? It's floating around. And so when you open a bag of crisps, right, and you pull a crisp out, the salt wants to float out and you can get in your eyes. So like that, we have to think about the difference of increased air pressure, increased pressure underwater in this habitat, and then increased humidity because it's humid in the habitat, and so we get a lot of rashes and a lot of skin irritation. So it was really fun to be underwater for the week, for the 8 days in my case, but there were some downsides there, and so you just have to live with them and sort of accept them.
Yeah, sure. So then if you had to compare life on the space station versus life underwater, you were mentioning looking out the window and seeing such amazing aquatic life and everything. So that must have been incredible. But then you have this view of Earth out the window from the International Space Station. So is it even fair to compare those two?
Not really. I mean, the view from the space station is just awesome. It's cool in the habitat in the Nemo, but you kind of see the same fish every day. You get to know the big turtle, and there's that shark, and but I don't want to diminish it. It's really cool. But floating around our Earth, and then we go around the Earth every 90 minutes, and because the Earth is turning below us, as we go around it, we can see most corners of the Earth if we really want to. And so when I was up there, I would set my watch because I knew we were going over Ireland, and I needed to go get some pictures of Ireland and take a look whenever I could, or Chicago, my hometown, or Rio de Janeiro, because my son was really into Brazil. And you just knew you were going to go over it, and then you were able to go out the window, and unless there were clouds, which there were always clouds over Ireland.
I was actually going to say, I just listened to an audio not too long ago of you out on, I think you were on the spacewalk, and it said, "Oh, Dan, you're going to be passing over soon if you want to take a look." And you looked and went, "It's cloudy."
Yeah, that's a surprise. But anyway, the view from station is awesome. So and the living on station is just fantastic. So it is not comparable. Well, I'm glad I did both. But if you were going to give me another couple of days in one of those places, I'd take another couple of days at the station.
Oh yeah. I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, I did the VR headset.
Oh, cool!
An International Space Station program for it.
Okay. Yep, I've heard of it. I haven't done it though.
It actually be very interesting to see if you did it, what you would think of it. I've obviously never done it in real life, so I was by the whole thing. You can
You
crawl.
can float all through it, all the modules and everything, right?
You can
That's
float
what I've
right
heard.
through it and go on the outside and crawl around the outside.
Oh,
You see the
cool.
Earth below you. I was just
Oh, yeah.
blown
Oh,
away.
I should do that. Okay.
So I can't imagine, like in real life, like if you were actually what that must be incredible.
It is incredible. Yeah, I would say you never get used to it. Certainly when you go outside and you're crawling around the outside of the space station, you go, well, this is just, it's amazing that we humans built this machine, got it to go 17,500 miles an hour, 28,000 kilometers an hour, and in a stable orbit, and it works, and it keeps me alive, and it produces power, and it gives me drinking water. It does all these things. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So you never get sick of it. You get sick of the same fish and sea turtle you see every day, but you never.
Not sick of it, but it's familiar.
Yeah. I wanted to get into some of the questions. We did have questions submitted leading up to this. So one of the first questions here is, I wanted to know if the challenges of isolations and tight spaces are something you feel are innately adapted, or is it something that you train yourself to adapt to?
So again, I would say that for most astronauts, I guess I can speak for me, and I think I'm relatively typical. Whatever the experience, our life experience or our makeup that brought us to the astronaut office, whatever that was, gave us a good foundation for working on our own, being member of a team. They seem like those are opposites, but they're really not. And so I think most of us have the good foundation for dealing with the isolation, dealing with the stresses of small team, isolated environment. And then as we go through the training, there's a realization that, this is a real psychological issue, and we want to make sure that we're prepared. So we do these training events, we do specific classes or a specific training on how to deal with those sort of issues, the pressures of small team, isolated team, team dynamics. And so I think it's both. We're sort of selected because we have those basic foundations, and then we get the training to handle it. And so, I think that's why most of us are good at that. And then I know, there are a lot of people that I meet that go, I would never do that. How could you live in a tin can for months at a time? And I'm just the way I am. I'm happy to do it, and I would do it again.
Like it takes a certain type of personality type to be able to be an astronaut, really.
I think that's true, although I think that definition is widening out, and because now that there's more possibilities to go into space, besides being a professional astronaut, as we've seen in the last couple months. So maybe it's not as narrow as we think it is, but we'll see. I guess we're going to see in the next handful of years as more and more people from all walks of life go into space, see what kind of experiences and difficulties they have.
Yeah, it's we were talking about it earlier. It's a very exciting time for space travel and for people involved in space, for sure.
Right.
And we were having a chat yesterday, actually, Quaveen here, he wanted to know, does being on the ISS feel more or less disconnected from Earth than being outside when you're in the spacesuit on an EVA? And when do you feel closer versus farther away from Earth?
Okay, so I understand the question, because it's interesting. When you're outside the space station, your whole helmet is filled with the Earth. You look out and you look, 400 kilometers away. So you have your whole face is looking at the Earth, as opposed to through a window. Yeah. And EVAs are a little special because they're dangerous, and you are out there because of a specific purpose. You're fixing something or you're building something. You have a job to do, and the clock is running. You have 7 hours of oxygen and cooling and battery power, and you've got to get it done. And so when we are outside, we are so focused on getting the job done that I do remember having a minute, okay, because I'm a little ahead of schedule, and they give me a break. They go, "Hey, Dan, why don't you clip on and just take a break, and then you can like really appreciate and look down and appreciate the beauty." Or you've got a friend that says, "Hey, we're coming over the coast of California, or here we're coming over Ireland, and why don't you take a look?" But most of the time, you are just trying to get the job done. Now, the real enjoyment of an EVA is when it's done and you can think back about the experience and what you saw. So I would say that I felt most connected with home in the space station, still looking out the window at the beautiful view. And then I could pick up the phone and I can call my friends and family and share my experience with them. And so spacewalks are special because it's a really high stress, all your attention is get that bolt in, or connect this connector. It's a different. You're not really trying to appreciate your connection to the earth.
Yeah, so you don't have time to think about so much exactly what's happening behind you. It's more like what you're focusing on and what your mission is outside on the station itself.
You spend a few minutes in your 8-hour spacewalk taking it in, but most of the time it's what's the next task? Where do I have to go next? What am I holding on to? What am I clipping onto? Where's my tool for the next thing? So it's really an intensive lot of brain work.
Well, there's no room for error there, right? You can't just go, well, I'm going to clip it onto here, and well, that's
right. Oops.
Clip it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So our next question here is from Ken from Cavan, and he wants to know if the transition to life on Earth again after returning felt in any way like the transition from lockdown to post-lockdown world. For instance, I feel like my social skills have atrophied from the lack of use. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's like because I'm laughing because I also feel the same way. I had that experience of like going out after being inside for so long, and it was like, do I shake a hand? Do I,
right.
Kind of like your social skills are kind of all over the place. So did you have that kind of thing coming back from
so, boy, that's a really interesting question. I would say I did have similar and relatable issues, although they're different. So when I came back, I noticed that my head was full, meaning I felt a little lightheaded for weeks, and it was as if I was a little drowsy. And I think my wife and I talked about it, and I think that it's because for 4 months my life was in this metal tube. I could see all corners of it, and I knew exactly. And then all of a sudden, I can look miles around, and now the amount of stimulus that was coming into my head was orders of magnitude more. And so so the thought was maybe my brain is just like processing all this from living in a tube to now walking around on the earth. The difference is, and you point this out, when I came back to Earth, all the rules were the same, the rules that I remembered about how to live on Earth, all the interaction rules. I didn't have to relearn how to greet people or how to, now we're not even post-pandemic, but now that we've opened up a little bit and we're trying to re-engage with our old lives, you're right. Rules have changed. Do you shake hands? Do you hug? Do you how close should you stand to somebody? All this stuff. So it's a little different now because rules are changing, and still it's not clear what the rules really are. So we're going to have to develop this a post-COVID protocol, and we're still developing. We're still trying to figure out what that is. So that's very interesting. But you're right. This and the psychological, like I'm used to seeing 4 walls and 3 people, and now I was in Kinsale over the summer and seeing my family, and the place was packed, and it was more packed than I'm normally seeing it. But it was great because it felt vibrant and everything. But it was a little odd for me to be walking around Kinsale and see so many people in one place. It was both good and a little discomforting.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why I was laughing at that, because I was like, I feel like I've become so awkward. I didn't feel like I was like that before.
You're out of practice. You're out of practice. B, you don't know the rules.
Yeah, so and you don't know what people are comfortable with. So you're kind of like now.
Exactly right. Yeah,
strange world.
I agree. That's very interesting. It's a great social science experiment in the next 5 years, probably, to see where we end up in terms of how we interact. What's the norms of interaction?
Yeah. We have one from a school here, Clonger National School in Cary, and they'd like to know what you do if you feel sick in space.
So that's a great question. So there are different ways of being sick. So before we go to space, we quarantine, as we all know how quarantine works. And so once you get on the space station, you feel pretty good that you don't have anything, that you don't have the flu or have a cold, and that you're going to pass it around. So you feel pretty good that you've left all that stuff on Earth. But there are times when you get a headache, or your stomach, something you ate didn't sit quite right. And so you can feel kind of crummy and sort of ordinary crummy. We have a big medicine cabinet, and we have a doctor on call 24 hours a day. So you can call down and go, I've got a weird rash on my back, or my ear hurt, whatever it is. So, and the doctor will say, hey, try this, try that. And then you can take some medicine or whatever. So we have all of a big medicine cabinet to take care of all that. Plus we have we have enough medical equipment to do some pretty dramatic stuff. We can cut people open, we can pull teeth, we can, try to take care of some more dramatic things. And most of us are not doctors, but all of us have had some training on how to do all that stuff. And so if need be, I could, cut a hole in your trachea, and so you can breathe, or do other things. So we're prepared for that. And again, it's not so bad on the space station, because really in a big medical emergency, we could be home in 6 or 8 hours if it's a big enough medical emergency. If you're going to Mars, if you're on your way to Mars, you're not turning around.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to, we have to be prepared. The team and the astronauts have to think about how we're going to deal with the unfortunate big medical emergencies if they happen. So I hope that answers your question. It might have been that some people, when they get to space, when they get to the space station, they feel sick. They feel like throwing up. And some people probably 25% of the astronauts do throw up when they get to space. I felt crummy. I felt my head was, I felt like I was hanging upside down. So I felt like my whole stomach and everything was up here, and I didn't throw up, but throwing up wouldn't have been the worst thing at that moment, because I just felt, because we're floating around the space station, but your organs are floating around your body, and your food is floating around your stomach, right? So everything's like a little different.
Is it like I do a bit of sailing, and I don't get seasick, or I don't actually throw up over the side of the board, but I just feel off out on days when the water's rough.
Yeah, it's so for the first day, and it lasts usually for a day, maybe 2 days for most astronauts. It's over, but it felt like every time I ate, it felt like the food would sit in my throat. And I knew it wasn't, and I felt like I was sort of hanging upside down, like there was pressure of all this stuff right here. And I went down to the mid deck of the shuttle on my first day, and I was like, boy, I would pay $100 for some gravity, right? Pull it all down. Yeah, but that's what
I was thinking. Oh, gravity.
Your body's amazing, because I went to sleep that first night. I woke up, I felt 100%. Like my brain rewired and said, "This is all normal. You're good to go." And so that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that happens when you're on a boat too. After a day or two, and you're fine, you're good to go.
Got your sea legs.
Yeah,
right.
Get your sea like that, then you're fine.
Right.
Quick one: have you ever saved any money by pulling a tooth?
No. Fortunately, have not had to pull teeth. They tell you when you pull teeth, treat it like a piece of glass stuck in a piece of wood, and that's what you think about when you're pulling a tooth. And I thought, well, that's really so. If you're a dentist out there, maybe you agree with that, but that's how I was trained, and I thought, oh, okay, now I feel like if I had to, I could do it.
Oh my gosh. I just had one come through right now from Cork Educate Together, and they said, what was your most life-threatening moment in space? Have you had a life-threatening moment?
I'm gonna knock on aluminum computer that no, I have not had anything that was life-threatening, thank goodness. I would say the closest thing to that is during spacewalks. You are tied to the space station with a retractable little wire. That's your safety line. But you're supposed to be holding on with your hands, of course. And there were a couple of times when I was not paying attention and I let go once, and I started floating away, and I had to grab the station again. And those high adrenaline moments, like, oh my God, so those are scary. Fortunately, no, we didn't have any fires or toxic atmosphere. So there are three things we worry about living on the space station. Three big things: fires, depressurization, a hole in the space station, and toxic atmosphere. Something gets released in the atmosphere that's bad for your health. And there's only a couple of things of those on the space station, but we have to be prepared for those. So none of those happened. I'm grateful for that.
Luckily, yeah.
Yeah.
And real quick, another from Cork Educate Together, is another teacher says the students did a debate in class about should we send humans to Mars. So they're wondering if astronauts receive training on ethical issues around space exploration.
We don't. So we do not now. We do not get training on ethical issues. The challenge, one of the challenges now on the International Space Station is we are up in space with many different nationalities, many different cultures, and so we do not get training, but we do consciously think about different cultures and different nationalities and the differences in your team. And one of the benefits of traveling a lot for training is that you get experience living in somebody else's culture and understanding some of the norms there. Now, going to Mars and the ethics of all that, I don't know if they're going to consider that. It's, I think all the astronauts, all the professional astronauts have dealt in themselves with the ethics of we're doing something pretty dangerous, and we have friends that have lost their lives doing it. Is that worth it? Is that worth it to my family? Is it worth it to me? And so we've all sort of thought about that and had to deal with all that. But in terms of a really long mission like Mars, that's a very interesting question. I don't know if they're going to consider that.
We could do a whole live stream just based on that in and of itself. That's
right.
A big topic for sure.
Yeah, you bet.
And Dan, we had over 100 questions submitted. Clear, we're not going to get through all of them.
It's yes, no. 27. You go to the bathroom just like you do on the ground, and.
So let me see if I can just pick one more before we go. Let's know this safe fit in space. Oh yeah, okay. So it's fourth class from. Oh sure, I picked this one. It's of course, and I can't pronounce Clungro. Rob's over here looking at me. Fourth class, Claro. Fourth class wants to know, how do you stay fit in space? Something I know a lot of people struggled with during the lockdown over the past year.
Oh, that's great. Well, we know and understand that getting exercise in space is important because both, just staying in shape is good, but being in space is really easy on your body. Your heart doesn't have to fight gravity, getting blood from your head to your toes and vice versa. Your muscles are not being asked to do any work while you're floating around. And so doing exercise is really important. So we from the very beginning have put exercise equipment on the space station, and we mandate, or it's in your schedule, to do 2 hours of exercise a day. Good for your muscles, good for your heart. And so it's great. It's part of our workday. It's scheduled in, and we do running on a treadmill, but you have to have bungees holding you down to the treadmill, of course, otherwise you'd float off. We have a stationary bike, good for your cardio. And That's just easy to do. You can watch a movie, or you can listen to podcasts or something while you're just cycling. And then we have a big weight machine, but we don't use weights because we're in weightlessness. So we fight against springs. And so hundreds of pounds worth of springs and fight, and you can do squats and, all the things that you would do with weights. And so we're very conscientious of that. We think it's important. We know it's important to keep your body, because if you're going to come back to Earth, you want to be in shape so that you're not a big bowl of jelly when you get back to Earth.
Oh, Dan, thanks so much. I could talk to you forever. It's always so much fun chatting away. And like I said, we have loads of questions we could have gone through. I made a comment earlier that I loved your background there. And if anyone can see, that actually is Dan outside.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Behind me there.
Well, I want to say hi to all my friends in Ireland. And again, I get to visit over the summer. My wife's family is from Cork, and I've got some good friends in Kerry. So it's good to hear Kerry being represented, and I can't wait to get back to have a great space week. I'm excited that there's so much interest in space, and I keep reading about the space industry in Ireland growing and growing. So that's really exciting to me too.
Yeah, it's very exciting. A lot of stuff going on over here in Ireland. Ireland seems to be space crazy. So I
think so. And Adam King is probably the band leader right now for space in Ireland. So good for him.
Oh yeah, he's great. He came to visit us here at the observatory, and he's now an honorary member of Black Rock.
Fantastic.
So,
that's fantastic. Great.
Hi. We're saying hi. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to everyone who has
thank you
over the last few days. Sorry we didn't get to everybody, but we don't have all the time to go through it all.
There's always next year.
There's always next year. Yeah, of course. But I hope everyone has a wonderful space week, and join us next time we do a live stream here on Black Rock Castle Observatory. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.